Hey there, true crime addicts. It's me, James Renner. Hey, I've got another update in the Maura Murray case. This is, I don't know that I'm going to make this a habit, but there's a big piece of information that I want to go over in the Maura Murray case. About a year ago, the police department at the University of Massachusetts Amherst released a pretty much all of their records on the case. And, at the time I was taking a break from reporting on this case. I was finishing up some other projects, but I kept waiting for people to report on this and report because there's some really interesting information that came out in these reports. And it really wasn't covered. A couple people touched on it, but there was some misinformation. Some things were not talked about that were in this report. So I want to give a full accounting of what's actually in these documents. There's about 36 pages here, and I want to go over it step by step. I'm not going to go over every single little bit, but the highlights. It's still going to be a lot. So thanks for joining me. We're getting back into the case a little bit. Maura Murray, as you know, let me just give you the brief summary. Nursing student, University of Massachusetts Amherst, Amherst, as they say, or you could call it the zoo. This is the February of 2004. She emails her professor, says there's been a death in the family. Hold my work till the end of the week. As you know, she buys liquor. She empties her bank account, only about $280. Drives into the White Mountains of New Hampshire, gets into crashes her car into a snowbank, and between the time of the accident and when the police arrive, about 7 minutes window, very short window, she disappears, never to be seen again. Now, that's the very short summary. If you follow the case, you know it's a rabbit hole, and it will take you any direction you want to go. They still have never found the body. Everything's on the table, from abduction to murder to dying, being exposed to the elements in the woods somewhere, to starting a new life. At one time, I was very certain she started a new life. I've kind of switched from like being about 60% certain that she had to about 60% certain that she was murdered by someone she knew. The one thing that I have become certain of over the years researching this case, I am convinced she was traveling with a tandem driver, and this driver that she was traveling with was the one that picked her up, and they went on to a destination. So I think we were looking at the wrong place and the wrong time if we're trying to figure out what happened to Maura Murray. And there is some circumstantial evidence in these reports that kind of back up my idea of a tandem driver, but we'll get there. Let's jump into these reports. So again, about 36 pages was released from the University of Massachusetts Police Department. This begins with a narrative from a police officer named Brian Kellogg. I'm going to read you some excerpts. So Maura disappears on February 9th. This begins the next day. On February 10th, during the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, I took a phone call from, and again, one of the reasons I'm going through this info is a lot of it was redacted. And so knowing the case as I do, I kind of know and have figured out some parts of what has been redacted. And it begins right here because they've redacted a name, and this is almost certainly Tim Carpenter that they're talking about, who was Maura's brother-in-law. He was married to Kathleen Murray, who has since passed. I will say this too. I'm going to put this document up on my website, mauramurraymystery.com, so you can read it at your leisure and tell me what you think. So anyways, I took a phone call from Tim Carpenter that stated he was the brother-in-law to a student named Maura, who lived out of 415 Kennedy. That's the dorm. Tim stated that the Haverhill, New Hampshire Police Department had found Murray's car on the previous night. When the car was found, she was not inside. Tim was asking if the UMass Police Department could go into her room in Kennedy and perform a well-being check, as they'd not been able to reach her all day. When I got off the phone, I called Haverhill, New Hampshire PD and spoke with Sergeant Smith. Now, that would be Cecil Smith, who was the first on the scene after the accident. Smith has since died by suicide, and the conspiracy theorists love to jump on that and point fingers at him, which is heartbreaking because I met Cecil Smith, and he was one of the nicest people I encountered during my reporting, just a nice guy. He was suffering from early dementia, Alzheimer's, and that was likely the reason he took his life when he did. I asked Sergeant Smith what happened. Smith stated that on the previous night he responded to a motor vehicle accident. The vehicle belonged to Maura's father, Fred. The vehicle had collided with a tree. Now, this is relayed in the report. Cecil wasn't there at the time of the accident. I think at the beginning they kind of assumed it was a tree. We know now she probably didn't hit a tree. It's likely she hit the corner snowbank on the other side, and that's what caused the damage to her vehicle. The doors were all locked. No one was around. Smith stated that there was wine all over the dash and ceiling. There were also bottles of beer, and that's going to become important here, bottles of beer and a box of wine still inside the car. Smith stated that no one was found in or near the vehicle. With the information I obtained, I informed another sergeant of the situation. Officer Johnson was sent to Kennedy Dorm to perform a well-being check. At this point, Officer Johnson took over the case. And then we get his report. In an attempt to gather more information about Murray's whereabouts, Murray's computer was signed on. This is when he gets into the room. He went into the room. Maura's computer was signed on to its America Online Instant Messenger account. That's what she used to communicate with a lot of friends back then. Everybody was on AOL at that moment. This is before we had smartphones and texting was a huge thing. I removed the away message that had been posted earlier by the UMass Police Detective Bureau. I was immediately messaged by several of Maura's friends from her hometown wondering if she was okay. I informed everyone that I was not Maura and that I was a police officer for UMass. While receiving these messages, I began to speak with one person who identified herself as, and I believe here the redacted part is Maura's sister. I asked her if she had spoke to any law enforcement yet. She stated she had not. I asked her if it could be possible for her to call me, and then she did. Through my questioning, this sister stated that Maura had attended West Point, and while at West Point, she was, and then that's redacted. I asked if Maura would ever consider suicide or harming herself in any way. She said that she had seen her sister at her worst, another redaction, and that if she reached a low like that, she would, meaning she could see her committing suicide. And you'll see this reflected in these reports a couple times. Members of Maura's family saying that she could, in fact, be suicidal. They could see that happening. That goes against what they have said publicly since then. Fred has made a point to say he did not say she was suicidal. We will see in these reports that that is not true. She stated that she had last seen Maura at Christmas and that it was obvious to her that Maura had been dealing with her, and this is redacted, but based on the context clues, we know they're talking about Maura's disordered eating. She suffered from bulimia. There would be, and this comes up a lot in here, there would be episodes of purging. She stated she knew from looking at Maura that she had been blank again. Corners of her mouth were red and dry. She also stated that if Maura was going to commit suicide, that going to the mountains in New Hampshire would be a possible place she would try. She stated that their family had hiked in the White Mountains of New Hampshire since they were kids. Maura loved it there. I then informed the sister that UMass detectives had located several conversations that were saved on the computer between Maura and a couple of friends via instant messaging. Only one of the screen names used in the conversations had been identified by UMass detectives as Maura's boyfriend, Bill Roush. Most of the conversations in these AOL chats were about problems between Maura and her boyfriend. I asked the sister if she knew any problems between Maura and her boyfriend. She stated that there were none that she was aware of. I informed her that the conversations had been saved. Only the screen name of the boyfriend had been identified. I asked her if there was a possibility she may know some of the other names, stated that she may know, and I read her the screen names. She recognized one, and this person's name is redacted. She stated that the screen name belonged to one of Maura's close friends when she attended West Point. She was not positive about the last name, but stated it sounded like, that's also redacted, and that he attended West Point in 2000 and 2001. I'm particularly interested in that little piece due to everything we've learned about Cadet Stefan Finkelstein, who later changed his name 8 months after Maura went missing to Stephen Baldwin. He's in prison in Ohio. If you've missed that story, go back and listen to it. But Stefan was at West Point until 2001. We know who was ever talking to her had attended West Point in 2000 and 2001 like him. Not to say that that necessarily 100% was Stefan, but it's interesting. Okay, and the report goes on the above date and time, and this name's redacted, phoned the station and asked to speak with an officer. When I picked up the line, in this one we realize he's talking about Fred Murray, because he stated that his daughter, Maura, who is attending UMass, had been involved in an accident and was missing. Fred stated that his daughter had been depressed and that he believed that she was trying to kill herself. So, not only did he tell the detectives in New Hampshire, but according to this report, Fred said that directly to the police at UMass. He stated that when the officers in Haverhill found her vehicle, there was a large amount of alcohol, but she was nowhere to be found. Fred stated that the last person he knew who had contact with her was a friend on the track team named, and I believe that would be Kate Markopoulos. Now, a couple of these names are going to be important. This goes back to that Saturday night before Maura disappeared, where she went out with Kate Markopoulos and her father to a brewery, and then later on they went to a party in the dorm room of a girl named Sarah Alfieri. So Maura, Sarah, and Kate were at this party. There's a lot of speculation about what might have happened there. We know that Maura hooked up with a boy that night. We know that her boyfriend, Bill Rausch, found out about it later by accessing her voicemail. So this is kind of getting to that. I told him that there was no way of identifying, track team named Kate Markopoulos and had the number of the track coach but could not get through. Shortly thereafter, Officer Kellogg received a call from Haverhill PD wondering if maybe Maura had returned to campus. The on-call RD was called, and Detective Black and I went to room 415 Kennedy to do a well-being check. Upon entering the room, we noticed that Maura had packed up all of her belongings as if she were moving out. Now, a lot of speculation has been made about this. People are saying that, she just didn't unpack from Christmas break. I've never believed that as an explanation. The officers certainly believe she was leaving, and other people did too. We're going to get that in a second. There was nothing else in the room showing that she had been there recently. We spoke with the residents of the room next door, who stated that they had not seen her since Saturday. A while later, Jeff Skinner from Student Security came down to state that there may be a problem with one of their employees, Maura Murray. One of the other employees had been contacted by Maura's father. This is when they hear about the story. He stated that this is a girl now. She stated that she last talked to Maura on Saturday. Maura never said anything to her that would make her believe she was depressed or that she was leaving. She also stated she was surprised that Maura had driven her car. She said that Maura was having problems with her car and that she would not even take it to the grocery store. And yet she drives an hour and a half or so into the White Mountains of New Hampshire. What was so important that she had to get up there? They were both asked if Maura was a heavy drinker. They stated that she drank socially, but no more than the average college student. Put a pin in that. When I asked what types of alcohol she liked, they stated that she most mostly drank wine. I then asked her if she ever drank beer. She stated that Maura didn't really like the taste of beer and doesn't really drink it. Remember, they found a 12-pack of Labatt Blue inside the car. Was that for Maura? Or did she buy it for the tandem driver? Did she buy it for somebody she was going to meet up there? I then spoke with Maura's supervisor. She stated that on Thursday night at approximately 10 p.m., Maura received a phone call which made her very upset. She stated that all she could understand was that Maura said, quote, "I shouldn't be upset, it's my sister," end quote, then walked back to her dorm. Now, we've always assumed and we were told that phone call was with Kathleen Murray when Maura is referring to her sister. Put a pin in that as well. That was the last time she had spoken with her. Skinner then retrieved an email that Maura had sent to her supervisor. We're getting to that email, and we've had various explanations as to what that email said. Here's it directly. In the email, which was written February 9th at, this would be 13:26 hours, so that would be 1:26 p.m., Maura said that she was going home for a week and could not work due to a death in the family. This is the first time I've heard that Maura said in that email she was going home. I called Maura's brother, and this must be Fred Jr., back and asked him, or maybe he's talking about Tim, actually. Anyways, he called Maura's brother back and asked him if there had been a death in the family. He stated that there had not been a death or any other tragedy in the family and could not understand why she had written that. I then asked him about the upsetting phone call that was about her sister. He stated that he could not think of anything that would be upsetting. He stated that one sister was in the service overseas, that would be Julie, and the other sister was with them and they could not think of anything. After speaking with, this is redacted, somebody called to speak with me. I asked her if she remembered the last time she saw Maura. She stated that she saw her in the early afternoon. She was at the water fountain and Maura passed by with a box of wine, a backpack, and a large hockey bag. She stated that she could hear glass bottles clanking together in the hockey bag and assumed Maura was just returning bottles. I then asked if she had any idea if Maura was moving out of the dorm. She stated she did not, nor did any of the resident life staff. She also stated that during the semester, Maura has always seemed to be alone. She also stated that Maura never uses the bathroom on the floor that she lived on, but instead goes to the 5th floor to use a private bathroom. I then contacted Cecil Smith of Haverhill. I asked him if he had found a hockey bag, a backpack, and a box of wine in the vehicle. He said that he found all of the items except for the backpack. That backpack is missing. He also stated that there was that 12-pack of Labatt Blue in the vehicle as well. Jump down a little bit here. On February 21st, so now we're a week or so, what is that? 21, so what is that, 12 days since the disappearance? February 21st, this person came to UMass Police Department as part of the investigation of his missing daughter. So we're talking about Fred. Fred came to UMass. As part of that visit, Fred went with myself and Lieutenant Thrasher to Maura's room. All parties put on gloves before entering the room. While in the room, Fred was not surprised by the neatness of the packing. He said that raising his children mostly by himself, I believe Maura and her siblings lived with their mother, which it's kind of a weird thing. Anyways, he said that raising his children mostly by himself, he had a, quote, clean as you go policy, end quote. If you used a dish, you cleaned it right after. Mr. Murray also seemed to become a little withdrawn after the viewing, stating that by seeing the room, he now knew that Maura was, quote, not coming back to UMass, end quote. Later on, I called Fred and asked for consent to enter his daughter's room to look for clues that may assist in locating her. Fred said, yes, of course, please, anything you can do. At 9:45, Area Coordinator Gay Reinhold keyed the room, and Officer Roberts and I searched for clues. As reported earlier, the personal belongings in the room were packed as if the occupant was prepared to move out of the dorm. Also, I should say this is a little piece that doesn't get mentioned a lot, but that I discovered during the course of my reporting. This comes from a source that was working closely with Fred at the time, who said, is like a private investigator type of guy. He said that they discovered Maura had been submitting applications to bars closer to home, back towards UMass, or back towards Hanson, the Hanson, Mass area. That she was applying for jobs as if she was leaving college. Anyways, back here. I photographed the room using a Sony digital camera. Those images are included with this report. Nothing was revealed by a search of her personal belongings about where Maura was traveling to, but Officer Roberts discovered email instant messages on her computer that indicated she was upset about learning her boyfriend Bill Rausch had cheated on her. Those instant messages were copied on a floppy disk and printed out upon returning to the station. I notified Chief Williams, back in Haverhill, of these emails and faxed them to him. He informed me that his department is being assisted by New Hampshire State Police, and he has scheduled an appointment to re-interview Bill Rausch. Because Bill Rausch had previously indicated to Williams that there was no strain in his relationship with Maura Murray. As we know about Bill, though, very good about lying. If you want to know more about that, look into the report I did concerning these women in D.C. that accused him of sexual assault, sexual harassment. He was charged with a felony. He got that pled down to misdemeanor. And when he was charged with the felony, was stalking his mistress. So it's a mess. Later on. Called Chief Williams to verify he had received the message about the outdated emails. Had previously... Oh, he's talking about these emails about finding out that Bill had cheated on her and whether they considered a motive for Maura's leaving. He was grateful for the information and was re-interviewing Bill and Fred later this morning. He stated a 20-mile grid search of the area was being conducted. Hadley, this is a note that says Hadley Quality Inn. This is a hotel outside of UMass. So the detective at UMass is following up on the events leading up to Maura's disappearance. He knows Fred Murray, her father, stayed at the Hadley Quality Inn. So he calls Hadley Quality Inn to get some records. Received check and receipts for Fred Murray. Dates February 7th, and he reserved the room for 2 nights for 2 adults. He also reserved rooms for the previous November 21st. He had visited Hadley. He reserved that for 1 night for 2 adults. He was there 2 weeks before that, November 7th, 2003. Again, 1 night, 2 adults. February 21st, 2003, 2 nights, 2 adults. The manager stated the same young woman, meaning Maura Murray, had stayed with Fred each time he stayed at the hotel. She also stated that it was not unusual for the hotel to have parents and college-age children staying together. This call to North Amherst Motors, photoed, they had a car. This has to do with the car Maura crashed in Hadley. So that night of the party, Saturday before she disappeared, she crashed her father's car in Hadley just outside the university. Photos incorporated in this report. They had not begun repairs yet on Fred's car because there was a question about whether the insurance would cover the cost since Maura was not on the policy. That might have been a source of some frustration at the very least. The insurance company, though, later determined they would cover the cost because of the circumstances, meaning Maura's disappearance. He also received a log receipt, which is included in this case file. Here we go. Here's a witness statement from Matt Clark, the third-floor resident RA of Kennedy Dorm. He track team member. He last saw Maura February 6th around 2 o'clock. And at that time, Maura was upset because someone had stolen her bag. There's a witness statement from another track team member stated Maura became quite a different person when she drank alcohol beverages. This is starting to go against that narrative that we were told that Maura didn't really have a drinking problem. Here's a report from Detectives Kidwell or Oravec and I met the track teams with coaches at Curry Hicks Cage. We had arranged to meet there because she had not responded to our many attempts to contact her. I believe they're talking about Kate Markopoulos here. They had arranged to meet with Kate Markopoulos because she had not responded to our many attempts to contact her. Again, this goes against that narrative that have been put out by the official places that Kate had been forthcoming from the very beginning, that she had spoken to police immediately and was very cooperative. I've known that that was not true, and it's good to see that reflected in this report. And we're going to get to why. The track team was leaving for a meet. Detective Kidwell and I interviewed Kate in a closed office. She was visibly upset before the interview started and became more emotional as we progressed. She stated she had no idea Maura was preparing to leave or what was bothering her. She denied that Maura drank alcohol much, any more than any college student, or had any behavioral changes when she drank. Kate knows for a fact that is not true. And I don't want to even go into some of the reports of what happened with the track team and after hours and drinking, but that is not true. I asked Kate to detail the events of Friday night before Maura drove to New Hampshire. She stated Maura's dad, Fred, Maura, and herself went to Liquors 44 at about 2100 hours. So what is that, about 9 o'clock? Bought a box of wine, and Maura bought some too, but Kate didn't know what... anyways, she's talking about the brewing company. At around 11:30 that night, they dropped Fred off at the Quality Inn and took his car back to the dorm area. They entered Coolidge dorm. That's where the party was, being held in Sarah Alfieri's room. Now, Sarah worked with Maura at an art gallery on campus. That's how they knew each other. They entered the Coolidge dorm and went to Sarah's room, where she was entertaining a group including, this part's redacted, roommate, another guy and girl, and 3 other guys. So how many people is that? Entertaining a group including Sarah, Kate, Maura, her roommate, and her roommate also is not talking. I've tried for years. Another guy and girl and 3 other guys. So now we finally have a number. Everybody in that room, Sarah and Kate, have said they don't remember how many people were there or what their names were. There were 9. 9 people at that party. At around 1:30 a.m., Kate and Maura wanted to leave, so the 3 boys offered to walk with them. Kate stated they walked the short distance to Kennedy dorm from Coolidge dorm, which is only about 100 feet. I didn't realize they were that close. Maura entered the lobby with one of the boys, while Kate walked back to Coolidge with the others. Kate stated she does not know who these boys are, but knows that Sarah knows the cousin of one of them. Again, this is a little different than what we were told. We were told that one of the boys was Sarah's cousin. That seems to not be true. It seems that Sarah knew one of the cousins of the boys. And Kate has not seen or heard from Maura since then. Kate became very upset during this interview. She said she was tired of answering the same questions over and over and just wanted us to find her. She was crying and said she doesn't trust the police because her father was jailed for 4 years in New York for something he didn't do. Now, I've gotten a lot of flack for including that detail in my book, True Crime Addict, when I discussed this incident with Kate's father. Obviously, it does have bearing on this case. As I suspected, it was the reason why Kate didn't want to cooperate and talk to the police. What happened was that, according to court records, Kate's father was building pipe bombs at his house. One of these pipe bombs showed up on the doorstep of his neighbor. and he was accused of trying to blow up his neighbor, and he went to prison for this. Now, that pipe bomb, there's really no discussion or argument about where it came from. It came from Kate's father, who's building pipe bombs in his property. Why is he doing that? Certainly doesn't sound good. Kate has always maintained that he didn't do this. He was framed. Now, it's interesting to note that neighbor had a daughter that went to school with Kate. So I don't understand. If Kate's father didn't do this, who put the pipe bomb at that house? A search of the dormitory sign-in sheets revealed, and this is where they're trying to track down the boys that were at this party. Detective Kidwell contacted one of the boys after finding his name in this report. He provided a written statement by email. The 3 boys are not UMass students. The others also subsequently provided statements. This is kind of a big deal. And these 3 gentlemen have never talked about this, at least publicly. But they certainly would have some more information about what happened at that party and what happened afterwards. I'd love to talk to them. If you have any information about this, please contact me directly, jameswrenner@gmail.com. And then they get into learning about the UMass Outing Club cabin. Now, the Outing Club cabin is in a little town called Bethlehem, New Hampshire. And if you were to go the route that Maura went and continued, you'd eventually get to that area of Bethlehem where the Outing Club cabin is. Now, in this report, the police come to the conclusion that they had somebody go and check the cabin. Nobody was in there, but the cabin was only rented out on weekends. And remember, Maura disappeared on a Monday. So they're trying to figure out if maybe she went to this Outing Club cabin, but they kind of come to the conclusion that she didn't know about it, which is false, most likely, because Maura was having an affair with her track coach, a guy named Hussein Baghdadi. Who's a nice guy. He was very open with me on the phone. He's the one that confirmed their affair and said that Maura had mentioned about running away. She had also never mentioned her father. And when Maura talked about running away, he always assumed Mexico, but he didn't know for sure. Hussein Baghdadi was a member of this outing club, would often go to the outing club cabin and hike in the White Mountains. I've always thought that maybe her destination that night could have been the outing club cabin. I will also say that I visited the outing club cabin. It's very easy to get into and is open during the week. Nobody's there. And at that location, I did find a copy of Not Without Peril, the same book that was in Maura Murray's car when she went missing. At first, I thought that was kind of a big clue, but I looked into the numbers, and that book has sold tens of thousands of copies, so maybe not a big deal. I received a call from Detective Russ Hubbard of New Hampshire State Police asking if we had knowledge of Maura Murray being in possession of a hospital ID card. Put a pin in that. That's going to become important later. We're going to get to why that little bit came up. And asked what hospital she and Maura went to. She informed me that Norwood Caritas in Norwood, Massachusetts was one of the hospitals, and Providence Hospital in Holyoke, Massachusetts is where she was doing some clinicals. I contacted both hospitals. They faxed me copies of ID cards of Maura, and I faxed them to Detective Hubbard. Let's go on. On February 13th, 2004, Detective Oravik, went to room 415. They go back into Maura's room. They check out her computer. After the imaging process was complete, the image was successfully verified. I scanned the image for viruses. This is, they're talking about the hard drive. Discovered approximately 6 Trojan horse viruses that were cleaned and deleted for the image. I performed several keyword searches. I was able to locate some hits from MapQuest.com and discovered that Maura had made inquiries for driving directions to Burlington, Vermont, and 430 East Street, Lenox, Massachusetts. This has not been discussed enough, I don't think. I also located 2 searches for hotels in Burlington, Vermont. These searches were made on Monday, February 9th, the day she disappeared. Kidwell contacted all these hotels and advised them of the situation. I contacted Burlington PD, spoke to Officer Lewis and advised him of the situation, gave him a description of Ms. Murray. I also contacted Lenox PD and spoke to Officer Bill Colvin. He advised me that 430 East Street is a resort called Eastover. It still exists to this day if you want to check it out. Officer Colvin went to the resort with a photo and her description and showed it to several employees, but they had not seen her. Officer Colvin also checked to see if she had registered under her boyfriend's name, Bill Roush. There is no record of this either, but there is an employee by the name of, that's redacted, that he would be returning to speak with. So I don't know if there's just another Roush there or what. But so Maura was looking at resorts, not just in New Hampshire, but a resort in Massachusetts that is kind of in between UMass and Hanson, where her family was, where she lived. On February 20th, 2003, Detective Lieutenant Thrasher and I met with, I believe this is now, this is Sarah Alfieri. Sarah Alfieri comes in and talks to the police. And the reason I know this is Sarah is there's a point here where they forgot to redact her name. Sarah advised us that she was good friends with Maura and could not imagine why she may have left without telling anyone. Sarah said that she and Maura had been friends since spring of last year, 2003. Sarah advised us that she was good friends with Maura and could not imagine why she would have left without telling anyone. Sarah told us about a party, about a party, meaning a person named something, who worked with Maura at the Hampton Gallery. He was a supervisor at the gallery, and Sarah stated that he was very friendly with Maura. I asked if she thought that he and Maura might have had some sort of relationships outside of work. She said she did not believe so and laughed when she responded. I asked if they ever saw each other outside work, and Sarah said no, but she believed that the two may have gone out for coffee one time, meaning Maura and this guy. I asked Sarah what she knew about Maura's family, and she said that Maura got along very well with her father. She also said that Maura and her father would go to New Hampshire hiking, and her brother Kurt would go on occasion as well. Sarah said that Maura was going to a clinical at a hospital near Boston. I asked Sarah about Maura and her drinking and social habits. She said that when Maura got drunk, she was happy. I asked her if she would hook up with guys at parties, and she said that Maura would make out with guys on parties on occasion. She also said that Maura would just kiss guys, and that was all. On Saturday, February 7th, Maura and Kate went to Amherst Brewing Company for dinner with Fred's father. Then Maura and Kate showed up at Sarah's dorm with 3 white males. So that's interesting. Maura and Kate, according to Sarah, show up with these 3 boys, not from campus. They say they stayed there until 1:30 a.m. Sarah stated that she was very drunk that night and did not know exactly what time they left. Sarah said that Maura was in a good mood, and she also seemed intoxicated, but not overly so. Maura also took photos that night with her camera phone. Be interesting to see those pictures, right? I asked Sarah if, in her opinion, Maura should have been driving that night, and she stated that Maura probably should not have been driving. I asked Sarah if, in her opinion, she thought Maura would have gotten into a car with someone in New Hampshire. Sarah said that she thought she would. She also said that Maura was sometimes overly trusting of people. I asked Sarah if she thought Maura would kill herself, and she said no. On Friday, February 20th, 2004, I called Maura's sister. I believe they're talking about Kathleen Murray here, who lives in Hanover. So that's Kathleen, who lives in Hanover, Mass., and asked her the following questions. Did you speak with Maura on Thursday, February 5th, 2004? Remember, this is So this is shortly after the disappearance. There was, and before Maura disappeared, that Thursday was the night that she got a call. She got very upset during her work, was talking about her sister, and we were told that this call was with Kathleen. The detective says, to Kathleen, did you speak with Maura on Thursday? Kathleen says no. Kathleen said she had not spoken to Maura since sometime around January 15th. Kathleen asked why I was asking that question because she said that another police officer asked her the same question. Kathleen said she had called her from her student receptionist job and she was drinking while doing so. I asked her if she was drinking while she was at work and she said yes. So Maura, this is a little weird because now it sounds like Kathleen is saying, well, she called her, like Maura called her, and that Maura was drinking on the job. It's weird, though. It reads weird. Maura told her that she was concerned about her drinking. Oh, she might be saying, the way this is worded, it might be that Maura called Kathleen at work and Kathleen was drinking on the job. You'll have to read it. Let me know what you think. But, and she said she thought Maura was using a calling card because Maura made the statement, I think I have 15 minutes left on this card. Kathleen said that she and Maura got along very well. She said that Maura was very good about hiding her bulimia and would just get into a car and drive away for a while, then return a few hours later. Kathleen assumed she was making herself sick during those times. I asked Kathleen what she thought happened to Maura, and she thinks Maura was abducted. She lives with her fiance, Tim. Back to the keyword searches, the detective comes back to that. I performed several keyword searches for the following words. The first word is redacted. That is probably a name. Then he also searched suicide, pregnancy, Vermont, White Mountains, and Tuckerman's Ravine. And then provides a report about those results. Obviously, there were some hits on those. Let me jump into this. I've got this divided into two documents. And we'll jump further into this because there's a few other points that are worth noting. But we're getting close to the end here. So remember those searches that, up to this point, we were told that Maura had searched for directions to Burlington. Apparently, she did a little more than that and searched specific hotels. The detective found a search done on her computer of hotels in the Burlington, Vermont area, and she searched a lot. I'm going to list them. Courtyard Burlington in Williston, Sheraton Burlington Hotel and Conference Center, Holiday Inn, South Burlington, Holiday Inn Express, South Burlington, Best Western Windjammer Inn and Conference Center, Econo Lodge and Suites, Mainstay Suites, South Burlington, Fairfield Inn, Burlington, Comfort Inn, South Burlington, Travelodge, Shelburne, Clarion Hotel and Suites, Conference Center, and Super 8 Burlington, South Vermont. So she's looking for hotels. The biggest question is, how many rooms is she looking for? As we know, she made one call to that resort in New Hampshire, not far from where she crashed, was not able to get a room, but she was looking at a condo that had 2 bedrooms. Let's see. This is one of the boys who called back, the boys from the party who called back to the police. He called from a cell number and he gave the following statement. My friend blank and me went to the 10th floor and met Sarah. This is where we met Sarah Alfieri. We left around midnight and walked Maura home. Maura went upstairs to her room to get something for blank. We hung out in the lobby for a while. We went back to Coolidge around 12:30. So they left the party at one time, then came back around 12:30 for an hour. We tried to get into the lounge, but it was locked. Around 2:30, I went to Sarah's room and Maura went home. More on those hotel searches. And they're still trying to track down the boys. Here's one that responded, received a call from blank advising that he, along with some friends, had found what they... Oh, wait, no, this is the big clue that is in here that I think might be really important and I think was misreported when it was talked about. Here's the clue. This comes from February 28th, 2005. I'm sorry, December 28th, 2005. So a year and almost 2 years after Maura went missing. The police department received a call from blank advising that he, along with some friends, had found what they believed to be Maura's hospital ID in Ossipee, New Hampshire. I think I'm saying that town right, Ossipee. And stated that the ID was found in the area of an old dump by a cemetery in Ossipee, New Hampshire. And he's willing to take officers to the site. The item was found the week before Thanksgiving while the men were hunting. So it was found around Thanksgiving 2005. Now, it's clear by the wording here that these hunters, these men, found what they think was Maura's hospital ID at this old dump by a cemetery in Ossipee, New Hampshire, but left it there. And I think that's important. They were going to take the officers back to the site to see if they could find it. That's why the officer was asking for copies of Maura's hospital ID. Now, we've been told that nothing of Maura's has ever been found. And while that's technically true, the way that statement was given was to say that nothing came of this clue, which I think could be very important. If Maura's body possibly ended up in that area and her ID, or at least her things were dumped there at this old dump. I think what is more likely is that these hunters brought the officer back to that scene and then could not find that ID again. So just saying that, anyways, I think it's an important clue. There's some talk about the ATM video. Then a detective, a trooper Landry from New Hampshire, requested a copy of Maura Murray's financial aid records. And that's when they learned that Maura Murray had financial aid and was using it for some living expenses. Now, this is interesting. This is about a subpoena for masslive.com. The detectives became very interested in this. And here's why. On April 11th, 2009, so 5 years after Maura disappears, Detective Gerald Perkins had discovered a posting on the masslive.com website in the Amherst forum referencing a missing person, Maura Murray. The post was under the headline, "Maura Murray was seen in Montreal. She is alive and well." This post was dated April 8th, 2009, with a post number of 3520. The author of the post used a screen name. The missing persons case for Maura Murray, Massachusetts. So now, if you've dug into this case, you might have heard about that posting on Mass Live. What's very interesting about that posting, if you read into it, they claim they knew Maura and had been in Montreal and came across her in passing, and that Maura was alive and well in Montreal. That's where that rumor kind of started. But what's interesting about that post is they abbreviate midnight as 12 capital M, capital N, 12MN, which is a notation used by nurses. Maura woke, let's see. This is a witness statement from Fred. Maura woke around 10:30 a.m. She told me about the accident. I asked, "Where's the car?" She told me it wouldn't run, it had to be towed. I thought about how to get a rental car. How far can it be towed? I went out and looked at the car, went to the office and asked who is open. Where is a Toyota place? Where can I get a car? She made some calls for me to rental places. I went to the room and found a couple places that had free loaners. I wasn't sure if I had insurance for her. I asked what happened. She said, I came around a corner and hit some sand and skidded. I told her she was going too fast. I asked her if she got a ticket. She said no. I told her she was lucky and that she didn't get a ticket for drunk driving. She told me she hadn't had a drink for a while and was okay. We went to North Amherst Motors around 12:30. I intended to bring the car back the next Friday night. Maura was making whimpering sounds while in the car. At the motel, she said, "This is the worst." We went back to the dorm. She was feeling bad because she had let me down. When she reached the back seat to get her stuff, I told her it'll get fixed. She went to her dorm, sort of slumped her way in. I dropped her off around 1:30. I went back to Bridgeport, Connecticut, Homestead Suites. I called Maura on Sunday about insurance and getting reports to the police department. I was sure she would call because she wouldn't let me down again. When asked, and this is the detective here, when he asked Fred, "Did you go to Liquors 44 with the girls?" At first, Fred stated no. Then thought about it and said, "I am unsure if I did, if it was before or after the brewery. I think it was after the brewery. I can remember the girls walking around and looking for wine and telling them to just pick something." This is a statement from Sarah, I believe. "Saturday night, Maura came over to my room with our friend, I believe that's Kate Markopoulos, after going out with her father. We were drinking and I do not remember what happened, but I know that Maura left with 3 men named whoever, who walked them home." So this is a repeat of that same statement, further kind of cements it. Now, here's a statement from somebody that ran at track at UMass that knew Maura from high school. Apparently she transferred here. "As always, Maura seemed sort of on her own, doing her own thing. I never really saw her with anyone. She started working security, as I had been doing since then. We have worked together a few times. She also lives in my building. We've talked in passing. She was always shutting herself in her room, and she said she never even saw Maura in her bathroom." I'm sorry, she's talking about the RA. "The RA on her floor was always shutting herself in her room and said she never even saw Maura in the bathroom. And she never saw Maura around either. What was even more odd was that people would see Maura using the 5th floor smoking lounge bathroom instead of using the one on her floor, and she doesn't even smoke. That was the only time we would see her in the bathroom. She would go in with a bottle of water, stay in for a long time, and flush the toilet a couple times." So there's that disordered eating coming back again. She would mention her boyfriend every now and then and just seemed fine. Didn't really think anything was wrong. "Last semester, my friend, an RA on the 18th floor of Kennedy, came downstairs while I was working security and told me about how someone had used her credit card to order food numerous times. She was going to the police to report it. I think the Amherst police. I talked to her a few days later and she said that her friend on the 4th floor had said that the police had come to Maura's door the next day, that the fraud of the credit card had been her doing." That's when the story about Maura stealing credit card numbers and identity theft and all that came out. So word was getting around campus about that too. This is from a coworker at Hampton Gallery. "After the winter break, one thing that was strange was the fact that she came back to work late. I think it was approximately 2 weeks into the semester, and I was covering for Maura's gallery shifts. When she finally came in, the Thursday before the weekend she went missing, I only had the opportunity to see her once, for a few minutes, with 2 other gallery workers. I gave them an assignment before I had to leave, and I didn't have an opportunity to touch base with her. I thought she would be into work the following week until she sent an email, I think on Monday, saying she had a death in her family and needed a week off. That was the last I heard from her." And that's it. So, I don't know. There's a lot of information that I think could potentially be very important in these reports. The Ossipee sighting of a possible hospital ID, I think, is not something that we should just dismiss out of hand. I think these people did see somebody's hospital ID, and when they came back with the police, couldn't find it again. So I'd be very interested in searches around Ossipee. So what do you think? I've got the full document up on my website, mauramurraymystery.com. Check it out. And, if there are any other breaking news in the case, I'll cover it. I'll be here. Until then, check out my weekly podcast, True Crime This Week. Comes out every Friday morning. And thanks for listening.